my name is Nancy Simpson, and I'm the president here at the Historical Society. And we're very privileged tonight to have Eric Reitan. He's got a program on Scenic Hill. And this is kind of close to my heart because I grew up on Scenic Hill. And at one time my parents owned the block between Guyverson and Dean Street. So this was the ideal place to grow up. We had the field behind us where we could play baseball, and we had the woods behind us that you could get lost in that woods and be out there all day long, and your mother never worried about you. You came in for lunch and you went back out. And for those of us that were probably much more adventurous than we should have been, we were probably down the canyon more often than we should have. Yeah, we knew where all the fish, good fish were. Anyway, it was a privilege to grow up there, and I think that this is a part of Kent's history. This is a wonderful example of the two styles of homes up there, and Eric's going to present part of his program this evening. The other is going to be presented in July. So I'm going to let Eric just go ahead and just start.
Sure enough.
Okay.
This is part one of two parts. This first part is going to take place from Kensington on the west side over to the canyon on the east, and then from the bottom of Wright Road down there, the canyon up to the cemetery on the far end. The first you want to.
Sorry, I want to fall asleep.
Already?
I've seen it before.
Okay, these are this road. This is the only way that you could get up to Scenic Hill. This is from the valley. Came up up to the cemetery. This is a 1912 map. To get there, the first cemetery they had was on this Burke's place. It was right here, and it's where Canyon Mill was. They had 2 acres there in 1875, and then they had bought land up from this Washington Central Improvement District. These are the 5 officers of it. That's the mayor of our first mayor, and this is Guyverson. This is Mr. Van de Vander, Guyverson and Harn, and then the other 2 back there are Griffith and Whitney. But anyhow, in 1912, this one right here where it says a PA writer, well that's actually a CA Rockland. That's how accurate the maps were back then. In order for my grandfather, my grandfather's had 10 acres here, and this is a state land behind him. This was actually in the canyon. The canyon actually went through here, and up here, town of Kent. Kent actually owned that. And where this road comes up would be pretty close to where Maple Street is, where Edmund Ford back there lives. It comes right past her place, up the hill, and it was very steep. And it went down to 59th in the valley. But anyhow, I don't know when the dump was ever put in, but whether everyone's got a dumpster. They used to go shoot rats, or whether they and the smell when it came down the. There's a lot of stories on that Kent dump, but I don't know when that existed. But if this was state and the town had in 1912 had that, my guess would be this way. It was still the only way up was from the valley, and one way for my grandfather to get to his house was up this way and a little trail in. There was no roads or anything. And in fact, the old house he's got sits crooked, and it still sits crooked today if you stand on the road and look at it. Okay, this is a picture of my father. At the cemetery. Chittenden was a manager there from 1908 to 1934, and my grandfather, when he came here in the winter of 1910 and 1911 to build his house, he had purchased the land in '06, but he came to build his house. He got the job at the cemetery as caretaker, because the man that was there by the name of Colvin was retired. So he started, my grandfather started there in 1911, and until he passed away in 1933. And then in 1933, that's my father there, standing by my grandfather's grave there. He took over where my grandfather left off, and he as a caretaker there until 1938, when he was appointed manager, because he was taking care of the lower city house, so until 1982 when he passed away. So together they pretty well were the caretakers there, dash managers from 1911 to 1982. And of course, it was all owned by the Oddfellows. And under their care, it had grown from 2 acres that the cemetery started out with up there to over 50 acres. It's up there today. The cemetery office was up until March of 1971 was in the old Reitan house here. We all know Peggy Sells. A lot of you know Peggy Sells. Okay, she started working for my dad in the office, in that front office of our old Reitan house there in 1968, part-time. And then during the summer, when my father had gone away to Grand Lodge, to the Oddfellows annual event. Peggy still is working there in the office today, and I think you all know Alan Audrey Sells. Alan Audrey, probably why she ended up with the job is the Sells lived just kitty corner from us in 1949. Al Sells built that house over there. When we were kids in 1950, we used to go play in there. They had a big basement that was filled with water and logs and stuff, and we used to go over and play in there. Yeah. Okay. My grandfather in 1906 cut the top of that tree off with his pocket knife. And he said we'd come back and we'd build my house there. So we watched that tree grow for over 100 years, and until my son and daughter-in-law, it was getting kind of rotten. They had to take it down. About, I don't know, about 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's not too long.
No. Okay. And in the front of this house, in 1911, the family lived in a lean-to off the back, but they built a sleeping quarters in the front of the house here. In 1911, while they started on the kitchen, they came in the middle of the winter when it was four kids, the 2 of them, 6 of them, and they had 2 older boys and 2 younger ones. My dad and my Aunt Helen were the younger ones. In 1913, there was no. When they came, they had no water. In 1911, for the first 2 years, if anyone knows where Rodders is, they're about 2 blocks over the hill from us. Their house is long gone. They're about where Vandy Vander is down. No, you know where the Rodders live.
That Marion Place.
Yeah,
Right where they're from.
yep. And they had spent the first 2 years by getting their water by pulling it on what they call a stone boat, which is a big tin thing with 2 barrels on it. They'd go back up towards the cemetery down into the Rodders, get their barrels of water. So did that for 2 years, and finally he went down to the end of Chicago Street and tapped into the nearest house. This was Simmons. There's about 8. This one of their 8 closest neighbors were on the hill. The closest one was Chicago Street down there, and he started digging. And he got as far as about Hemlock, about right off from where you live there on Hemlock. He was coming up 4:30 in the morning. This gentleman was coming down the road, Milligan. There's one house that was way out back of the cemetery, and he had his wheelbarrow full of his belongings. He said, "Pete, where are you going?" He says, "I'm going back to Kansas." He says, "I can't stand that's mother-in-law." He was living with his mother-in-law, his brother's wife. So he said, well, how about coming to work for me, Pete? So he came to work for my grandfather, and he finished digging on up the water line up to the house there, so they had water in 1913. And Pete lived with them until 1916 in that old temporary shed.